Hi everyone, I'm Lauren from Peas in a Pod, and today I'm going to talk to you about moonshine. And no, that's not a super pretty name for moonlight. It's a name for bathtub liquor, aka bootleg liquor, aka illegal alcohol. So some of you might be a little confused about the idea of illegal alcohol in the US. Well, there was a point in time when alcohol was actually illegal in the US. People couldn't transport it across state lines, they weren't allowed to brew it, and you weren't allowed to sell it. Now this was called Prohibition. So Prohibition is a movement that started in the mid-1800s, and it was led mainly by women. Now you have to remember, at this point in time in history, women weren't allowed to own land or to vote. So they were really dependent on their husbands, and a lot of them felt that their husbands were spending all their time in saloons drinking away the family money. So they believed that if they were able to ban alcohol, then they would be able to have more secure lives, and they would also have happier home lives. So after decades of the Temperance Movement, it was finally ratified into the Constitution in 1918, so that alcohol was effectively banned in the United States. You couldn't sell it, you couldn't transport it, you couldn't make it. So the image that most people get when they think of the 1920s in America are women in flower dresses and jazz music and speakeasies. Speakeasies were illegal bars where people would go to get alcohol during the 1920s. These were often in underground areas. You would have to have a password to get in, and you only were able to get in if you knew someone that was there. And these all really came about in part because of the Prohibition movement. So because there was suddenly no longer any alcohol that people could legally have, it became something that you had to get on the black market. Gangsters began opening up speakeasies, they began opening up breweries to make moonshine or bootleg liquor, which is just, illegal alcohol, and they ran smuggling rings. One of the most famous gangsters of all time is Al Capone, and you've probably heard of him, you've probably seen him in movies, and the reason for that is he's kind of a fascinating character. So nowadays in popular media, gangsters and the 1920s are kind of romanticized, but it was a very violent period of time. So you'll see the violence in mafia movies like The Godfather. However, even in those movies, the lines that people focus on and the scenes that are really iconic often aren't the really violent ones. There are scenes of Marlon Brando telling people that he's going to make them an offer that they can't refuse. There's scenes of Michael Corleone telling his brother that it was him, and saying you never go against the family. But then there's other scenes that people remember with Sonny getting gunned down, or the massacre while Michael is at the wedding. So just for an example, a lot of people will dress up as gangsters for Halloween, and the costume tends to be seen as something kind of fun and silly and maybe a little cool, but the violence in it is often overlooked. So Prohibition came about because people honestly believed that by banning alcohol, they would create a more moral society. They ended up creating the exact opposite of it and gave gangsters and mobsters a foothold in American cities. So in 1933, Prohibition was finally repealed with the 21st Amendment, and people could now sell liquor again, they could buy it, they could make it, and they were allowed to transport it. Now the various laws still vary by states, and in fact there are still towns today that are dry towns where you cannot buy or sell alcohol. So people are still making moonshine, and the reason that people are still making it is, one, it is very cheap. and sometimes regular alcohol can be much more expensive. A lot of people also make it because of tradition. So you'll find that the people who actually make moonshine tend to be much older, and these are individuals who, when they were younger, this is what they drank because, you know, maybe they lived in a dry town where you couldn't buy alcohol, or maybe they themselves lived during Prohibition, or they had a family member who did, and the practices of, you know, making moonshine was just something that was passed down culturally. And we actually have a moonshine jug. It's an antique in my house. It was owned by my great-grandmother, though the family has maintained that she never made moonshine and no one in the family ever did. As for my father, he said that whenever his grandfather wanted alcohol, he would just cross the border into Canada, because we lived right on the border there. We were French Canadians for a long time, so they would just take the truck over into Canada and actually get, you know, the more safe and better alcohol than risking making bathtub gin. So if you're ever in a situation where someone offers you moonshine, my best advice is to don't drink it. Don't drink it, okay? Moonshine is not regulated. There's no, you know, federal oversight of what's put in it or how safe it is or how it's brewed. It can be extremely dangerous, and even to this day we hear of cases where people have become violently ill, have become permanently impaired, or have even died from drinking moonshine. Do not drink it. So I hope that this episode has helped to explain a little bit about moonshine and Prohibition and the Roaring 20s. It was a really fascinating time in American history, and if you're interested in the topic at all, I really suggest that you look into it further. If you've liked this episode, please hit the like button below and be sure to subscribe to our channel. We come out with new episodes every week. And check out our website to learn more about us and other ways that you can increase your cultural literacy. And if you want to find more ways that you can incorporate English slang into your daily conversations, check out our WeChat group, where we have a group called Daily English Slang, where we'll be giving you new slang every day and explaining how you can use it in daily conversations. I've been Lauren with Peas in a Pod. Until next time.